Hello and welcome to Build Basics, the show where we run you through how to recreate your favourite heroes, villains, or otherwise in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. Today we're going to start off with Heavy from Team Fortress 2, the face of the games, and one of the easiest to build. I mean, how can you not fall in love with an overweight Russian man? So to start off, we're just going to lay out the necessities for the build going forward. Number 1, we've got to have plenty of tanking ability. While Heavy is synonymous with mowing down enemies left, right and centre, his main role on any team is being a damage sponge, who just so happens to be good at holding a minigun in the rough direction of the enemy. Speaking of being good at holding a minigun in the rough direction of the enemy, you have to be able to output the damage to match the damage you're taking. Your fists have to be up to scuff. While everyone else is running around with baseball bats and shovels, you're doing more damage with nothing but your bare knuckles. So with that out of the way, let's get into the build. Starting off with race, the obvious pick would be Variant Human, which is coincidentally what we're going to go with. However, if you don't feel like playing another Variant Human, or just want something more in line with fantasy, then you could go Mountain Dwarf. Heavy is the slowest of the 9 classes, and a buff to con and strength will be very helpful early to mid-game. If you feel like playing up Heavy's tankiness, then Hill Dwarf also works. Variant Humans get +2 to any 2 ability scores of their choice. Go for Strength and Dexterity. They get a skill of their choice. Survival shows your ability to track down and kill Mama Bear. You get a free language of your choice, if only Russian was an option. Talk to your DM. And finally, get a free feat. Choose Tavern Brawler. You get a +1 to either Strength or Constitution, go Constitution. You gain proficiency in improvised weapons, so that sandwich in your pocket is now a viable weapon with which to beat your opponents with. Your fists now do 1d4 bludgeoning damage, and when you hit an opponent with your fists and improvised weapon, you can use a bonus action to attempt to grapple them. Before you were lugging a minigun, you were lugging people's heads free from their necks while escaping prison. If you went Hill Dwarf, you get +2 to Constitution and +1 to Wisdom. The real thing you're here for is Dwarven Toughness, giving you an extra hit point per level. Mountain Dwarf also gets a +2 to Con, but instead of a bonus to Wisdom, they get +2 to Strength. The other thing they get doesn't matter, as you'll guess it anyway, thanks to your class. For your background, we're going to pick Mercenary Veteran. You gain proficiency in athletics and persuasion skills, as well as the ability to identify other mercenary companies along with a little bit of information about them. Your time working for Red Man and Blue Man taught you a thing or two about the sellswords of the world. Now ability scores. We'll be using the standard point array, that being 15, 14, 13, 12, 10 and 8. Roll for your stats if your DM allows it, just remember to keep your strength above 13. That shouldn't be too difficult. Strength is number 1. Your punch is rifle solid steel, that takes some serious muscle. Dexterity is next. Despite your minigun not requiring much precision, this will help us out with your gun's damage. Then Constitution. Without it, you wouldn't be much of a tank. Next is Charisma. You're the face of Team Fortress 2. Everyone just seems to love your shit-eating grin. Follow that up with Intelligence. It's a common misconception that Heavy is stupid due to his broken English. However, he's actually smarter than most give him credit for. Finally, Dump Wisdom. You could technically swap any of these last 3 stats as you see fit, especially Intelligence and Wisdom. Heavy just tends to rush into battle head first without much foresight. Now we get to class. There are 2 main options for Heavy. Spoilers, will be taking both eventually, but for this build we're going to start out as a fighter. Level 1 fighters get a fighting style. Pick archery for more precise spraying and praying. This gives you a +2 to your ranged attack rolls. While you don't normally have guns in Dungeons & Dragons, crossbows are a decent alternative, specifically a heavy crossbow. This does 1d10 plus your dexterity modifier. For now your minigun is a little slow, but it'll start to speed up, don't worry. Your hit dice is a d10, meaning at this level, you'll have around 12 to 16 hit points, depending on race and what you rolled, if you rolled. They also get Second Wind, which allows you to take a bonus action to heal 1d10 plus your fighter level. Did somebody say, sandwich? You can pick 2 skills from the fighter list. Intimidation and Animal Handling will ensure anyone on the battlefield will either be shitting their pants or grateful that you're on the same team, as well as allowing you to empathize with the Mama Bear you just killed. Second level fighters get Action Surge, allowing you to take an additional action once per short rest. Use this to fire your minigun and slap somebody with your sandwich. Third level fighters get to choose their martial archetype. Heavy would be a brute from Unearthed Arcana. If your DM isn't comfortable with Unearthed Arcana stuff, Champion also works fine. Brutes get Brute Force Die. Extra dice you can add to the damage of any weapon with which you are proficient. At this level it's just a d4, but it will get better as we go. 4th level fighters get an ability score improvement or a feat. The Crossbow Expert feat is a great feat. That means you don't have disadvantage on range attack rolls because of the target being within 5 feet of you. When you take the attack action with a one-handed weapon, you can make an attack with a hand crossbow in one of your hands as a bonus action. And most importantly, you get to ignore the loading property of any crossbow. This is great, as we pick it up just before we get extra attack. Speaking of, 5th level fighters get extra attack. This means that when you take the attack action, you can take 2 attacks instead of 1. Combine this with Action Surge for a whopping 4 attacks in 1 round. Pretty impressive for a crossbow. 6th level fighters get another ability score improvement or another feat. The Athlete feat isn't great, but it is in character. You can increase either your strength or dexterity by 1, go for dexterity. Getting up from prone takes only 5 feet of movement, climbing doesn't cost you any extra movement, and you can make a running long jump or high jump after moving 5 feet instead of 10 feet. Your AC isn't looking great, considering if you've been playing in character, at most you've been wearing leather. Let's buff it with a few barbarian levels. Level 1 barbarians get an armored defense, making their AC 10 plus a dexterity modifier plus their con modifier, while not wearing armor. That makes it around 15 to 20 stats depending. While still not great, it's better than the alternative. They also get the ability to rage. As a bonus action, you can get the following benefits for 1 minute. You have resistance to bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage. You have advantage on strength checks and saving throws, as well as the bonus to melee damage that uses strength. Normally this bonus would increase, however we don't really go that far in Barbarian in this build, so it will stay as a +2 bonus. They can do this a total of twice per long rest. Barbarians have a D12 hit dice, rather than the fighter's D10. Remember this when doing hit points for the next few levels. 2nd level barbarians get Reckless Attack. You get advantage on attack rolls made with strength-based weapons for the round, but creatures get advantage on all attack rolls against you. You should only really be using this if you've lost your minigun or you're out of bolts, as your fists are nowhere near as good as your minigun. Should you decide to break character a bit and use a 2-handed melee weapon, I'm sure no one would hold it against you. They also get Danger Sense, giving you advantage on dexterity saving throws against effects you can see. Not very in character, but Heavy is the only class to be able to tank rockets or fireballs, so this might explain how. 3rd level barbarians get to choose a Primal Path. Path of the Totem Warrior is great for any tank build. While it is supposed to be a spiritual barbarian, you could reflavor it so that Heavy just embodies a bear so much he starts to take on aspects of one. You can choose a Totem Spirit. Spirit of the Bear gives you resistance to all damage except psychic while raging, allowing you to just scream those rockets off. Finally, you also get the ability to cast the spells Beast Sense and Speak with Animals as rituals. Not entirely in character, but I don't know. Heavy always seemed like a down-to-earth guy to me. You also get an extra use of Rage per long rest. 4th level barbarians get an ability score improvement or a feat. The Tough feat gives you 2 extra hit points per level, so at this level, 20 extra hit points on top of what you've got already. This makes you a beefcake, and in combination with Rage, the tankiest of tanks. Now we're going back to Fighter. 7th level Brute Fighters get Brutish Durability. Whenever you make a saving throw, roll a d6 and add the die to your saving throw total. If applying this bonus to a death saving throw increases the total to 20 or higher, you gain the benefits of rolling a 20 on the d20. 8th level fighters get an ability score improvement or a feat, and for once we'll take the ability score improvement. Bump your dexterity for a harder hitting minigun for mowing down little babies. 9th level fighters get Indomitable. Once per short rest, when you fail a save, you can choose to re-roll, but must use the new roll. Use this to make double sure that the rocket is properly screamed away. 10th level Brute Fighters get an extra fighting style. The Unearthed Arcana class feature variance means we can now give our puny fists a much needed upgrade. The Unarmed Fighting style means that your fists now do a d6 of damage if you're holding something in one hand, or 1d8 if you're holding nothing. In addition, when you successfully start a grapple, you can deal 1d4 bludgeoning damage to the grappled creature. Until the grapple ends, you can also deal this damage to the creature whenever you hit it with a melee attack. This works great with Tavern Brawler, meaning you're now just as good in melee as you are in range with a mix of rage and grappling. Your Brute Force die also increases to 1d6. 11th level fighters get an improved attack, allowing them to make 3 attacks when they take the attack action. This means you can do a total of 6 attacks per round with Action Surge. This is the closest we're going to get to a minigun in D&D 5e. 12th level fighters get an ability score improvement or a feat. Bump your dexterity for maximum baby killing. 13th level fighters get another use of Indomitable per short rest, but you can only use it once per turn. 14th level fighters get another ability score improvement. This is the great thing about fighters, they get ability score improvements like it's Black Friday. Pump your strength for better smacking when your Sasha needs some rest or has been stolen from you. 15th level brute fighters get devastating critical. When you get a crit on an attack, you can add your fighter level to the attack's damage. To cap this build off, we're going to take a dip into range. No, just kidding. 16th level fighters get our final ability score improvement. Cap your strength to ensure that when the mean orc takes your Sasha, you can beat in its head and take her back. Your brute force die also increases to 1d8. So with the build finally over, let's go over the ups and downs. You are a beefy boy with around 200 hit points, with rage that's effectively around 400 hit points. No rocket ever made will ever be able to put you down. You have the ability to output tons of damage, averaging around 45 points of damage a round, or 90 points of damage with Action Surge. If you crit, that'll be 41 points of damage on average for a single hit. In just a few rounds, most enemies will be crying out for mercy. And finally, Sandwich. For negatives, spraying and praying doesn't really work in D&D, which means we had to focus down on dexterity instead of constitution. While you're more than great at tanking, you could be better. Your AC also isn't great at around 17. For a frontline tank, you should be aiming for somewhere in the 20s range. If you rolled well, good for you, but for those of us stuck with the standard array, we could do with higher AC. This build also requires quite a few feats to work, which means they'll be behind most of your peers in terms of stats for quite a while. Some campaigns might also end before your first ability score improvement, really leaving you in the dirt when compared to your fellow players. But who cares? You're the only one who can fire a crossbow as fast as you can, and who needs to tank if you tear the enemy down before they get close enough to land a hit? Just aim and pull the trigger. If anything survives that, be sure to smash the skulls open with your bear-like fists.